Hey, folks, this is Mark Devine with the Unbeatable Mind podcast. Welcome back. Thanks so much for being here. Super stoked to have you. I appreciate your time and attention. And as you've heard me say before, I do not take it lightly. You've got a billion things vying for your attention. The fact that you're here listening to this is a big deal to me, and I'm humbled. If you like the show, please share it. Please go rate it. It helps other people like you find the show. Awesome. Also, quick announcement. We will be making some changes to the podcast. We'll be renaming it. We've hired a new producer. We're heading on to a new platform, really making a push to really up-level it, 10x it, maybe even 20x it in the next year and a half. So those will be fully rolled out by February. We launched the new markdevine.com website, but you'll see some changes soon. So appreciate your patience there as well. All right, my guest today, Iron Ed Hiner. Hoo-yah. Navy SEAL, retired lieutenant commander. Man, I love talking to teammates. It's just so cool. Let me give you a quick background on Ed, and we'll get right into it. So Ed, like I said, retired as lieutenant commander. Anxious to hear how you got the nickname Iron Ed. He saw 9 major deployments, 5 different continents, fought in 3 separate wars. That's uncommon. Twice awarded the Bronze Star with Valor. He's now a coach and consultant, specializing in leadership development, team building. He's got his MSEL from the University of San Diego, a program I know well. He's passionate about helping people learn entrepreneurship, what he calls SEALpreneurship, which is like probably mentally tough entrepreneurship, and working with juveniles and kids who maybe don't have access to that kind of mindset training. First ever Navy SEAL to be spot promoted during the Battle of Ramadi. Is that true?
That's true.
Cool.
That's very true.
Dang, Ed.
They didn't pay me though. They didn't.
So
no, they didn't.
Did they take it away from you after the war?
Yes, they did. Yes, they did.
Such bullshit, by the way. I'm sorry.
It was a crock of shit. I still think they should pay me. They owe me about $20,000.
They should. You should petition for that. Call Trump. He'll get it for you.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Well, man, it's nice to see you. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Right on, man. Good to be here.
Yeah. So I know there's a ton of stuff like recent that you want to talk about, but of course, everyone wants to hear, some of the earlier stuff. Like, what was your childhood like? Where did you grow up, and why did you end up, standing on the grinder at Buds and whatever class you were in? So let's talk about some of that stuff first before we talk about your book and some of the work you're doing today. So why don't we do that? What was early Ed like?
Well, let's see. I was born in Blue Ridge, Virginia, in the mountains, very small little town. And by the time I was about 13 years old, both my parents were gone. I lived with my grandmother. Wow. So I was a hustler. Luckily, I became a very good athlete. I made varsity baseball as a freshman in high school. I was a 3 sports guy. And when I made Player of the Year, the state of Virginia, I got a scholarship to Virginia Commonwealth University, which changed my trajectory. Because my trajectory from where I came from could have went south real quick.
Right.
And all the people around me, all the influences around me. So, so I ended up getting a baseball scholarship. I was coming out of college. I played 4 years as a starter. Didn't get drafted like I thought I was. I had the slow foot disease. I could hit and throw a little bit, but I couldn't run that well. As an outfielder, you have to run or be able to really slug it. Mm-hmm. So I was going to be a stockbroker of all things, and then I happened to be in Virginia Beach on Christmas break, and with a friend of mine. It was one of my baseball player buddies, and his dad had retired from his job and took a part-time job living in a store, like a storage unit area, on a little house, just managing the storage unit. His dad was like a people person, like the mayor of Virginia Beach. And Tom and I, my friend, we'd been out all night. We're passed out on the floor, and his dad drags us up and it's like, "Hey man, this lady," it was like 1990. "This lady needs help. Her husband is on a ship in the Gulf, and she's got 3 little kids. She's dragging kids around, and she got evicted from her place, and she needs to get out now." So my friend and I, Tom, got her a truck, got her some boxes, went to her house and started packing up. And on the first load over to the storage unit, I ran into that guy. We were just happened to be unloading stuff and talking to him. He goes, "Hey, I'm on leave, man. I'm in the Navy. I'll help you guys out." And we spent about 24 hours moving this lady's stuff. He happened to be a SEAL. The next day after we slept, after that moving, I actually hitchhiked back to Richmond where I was staying, and signed up.
No shit.
Enlisted, baby. You damn
Spend
right.
24 hours in the Navy SEAL and you'll find yourself in the Navy.
It was it. It clicked. I'm like, that's it. So
That's wild.
So I didn't go back.
Who was that guy, by the way?
What's
curious.
that?
Who was that guy?
Man, I've been on our, our Facebook page at 5326. His name I thought was Mark. I couldn't figure out his last name, and I probed everybody on that list. I found a couple guys, but it wasn't them.
It's hilarious. Interesting. The one guy who got you into the SEALs and you can't,
So if he's listening, man, he had a big scar on his stomach. I remember that. He was a big buffed up dude. So if he's listening, and he's from Pittsburgh. So I actually dug through, asked the people at the database if they could figure out some people from Pittsburgh. Name might be Mark or whatever. So haven't figured it out yet.
That's interesting. So what BUD/S class did you end up in?
The last hard one, of course, 189.
189. That was
first time.
That was 19 after me. You're making me feel old. Holy shit. 1980. So 1990, what? 93?
Graduate. Yeah.
All right. What were your biggest ahas, or what was like the one thing at BUD/S that you've always carried with you? You said, you know what? I'm glad I learned that.
I think Hell Week for all of us is a week of just, no shit.
Yeah.
I can do about any damn thing moment. I had some, obviously we all had good instructors, and I think some of the instructors anchoring those beliefs in you when you look around, everybody else is miserable. You're like, man, I feel pretty good. Everybody says I'm full of shit when they say because I'll tell them I never thought about quitting because I didn't have plan B. I was a poor kid. I had 2 trash bags full of clothes when I left college, right? I didn't have anything. There was no plan B. So my focus was on plan A and going forward with it.
You didn't have to burn your boats because you didn't have any boats to burn.
No, no bridges behind me either. That was done. So I didn't, I just looked around. I'm like, wow, I kind of realized if I'm doing all right and these people are suffering that bad, I must be pretty hard. So it didn't bother me. But I think Hell Week, once you make it through Hell Week, it is that's a moment you go, okay, I'm capable of a lot, 20 times more than I ever thought possible.
Yeah. In fact, you nailed it right there. I've used that 20X in my teachings now. And I think I had when I was getting ready for Hell Week, I was sitting on the berm taking some alone time. I don't remember who it was. It's another one of those things. I wish I remember the instructor's name, but kind of came up over the berm. He saw me sitting there. He kind of appreciated what I was doing. You know what I mean? Everyone else is like scurrying like a little cockroach in their little fear base. And I was just sitting there kind of staring at the ocean and just getting ready mentally, Yeah. And he said, Mark, don't worry about this thing. You're capable 20 times more than you think you are. And
wow. He must have passed that down because somehow I've heard that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, right.
And so that stayed with me. And so that's kind of a core thing. And a lot of people don't realize this listening, but Hell Week is really not about training. It's about the test.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? There's a lot of training that goes on before and after Hell Week. Hell Week, you're not doing anything special. You know what I mean?
No.
You're just carrying freaking logs around in boats and you're surviving. So it's a test.
Yeah, you're digging
anything new, except maybe a new way to be a sand cookie or something like that. That's cool. So where'd you go after BUD/S?
Well, I went to SEAL Team 4.
Right.
I did 2 platoons at SEAL Team 4. It's because remember back in the in the early 90s, that was SEAL Team 4 was like the dream team.
It was a dream team. Yeah.
Everybody wanted to go to South America.
You get to go South America, fight the drug war. Yeah.
Yeah, it was cool. So I did the 2 platoons there, and somehow I applied to officer candidate school. And at the time, the SEAL teams are so small. Now they're gigantic compared to when we were active.
True. Yeah.
There were only 2 slots per year for one West Coast, one East Coast, and I got the East Coast one. So took it, and that was it was a pretty good gig. And I went West Coast, and I went to SEAL Team 5, which I think is my favorite team.
SEAL Team 5 were the real pipe swingers from, I was at Team 3. So you had Team 1, which were kind of like the straight and narrow guys. Team 3 is somewhere in between. Team 5 were the knuckle dragger, pipe swingers. Everyone back then was already all tatted up at Team 5.
Oh, yeah. And most of them ended up in my platoons, I think. So I learned to tap dance really well.
Who were some of the guys that operated with you back then?
Oh, my God. Well, the great guys, just unique personalities. Jeff Payne, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Jeff was, I had a lot of time with Jeff. Tony and Freddie, you've probably
Yep.
seen him on History Channel.
Yep.
Kevin Kent, you know him?
Kevin Kent.
He does a lot of movies now. He's doing Jason Bourne movies and stuff right now.
Is that right?
Yeah,
That's
Kevin.
freaking cool.
It was good to go. Tage Gill, how about that crazy man?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All of them happen to be in the same platoon.
No kidding.
And then I was actually, yeah, it's sad, but I was in a platoon with Bill Mulder, if you know that name.
I do.
Yeah. He was a superstar, man. He was a great guy. So I had a lot of good guys, just unique personalities, man.
Team 5, Team 3, McCraven shifted us around 94, 95 over to Bahrain. But Team 5, you guys were still going to Westpac, right? And so out to Guam.
Korea mostly.
Korea. Yeah, that's right. What a glorious
Spent
place.
a lot of time on Busan, hanging out in a tent, sleeping on the ground. Some crappy hole.
Yeah, I've been to Korea like 6 times.
Yeah, same. I think that's about what I've been, 5 or 6 times.
And they all seem like exactly the same. Like the same people, the same places.
I agree. Yeah. My experience wasn't that good. I know people love Korea, and I love Korean food, but man, it was just always sleeping in an abandoned building or, on the ground somewhere in the middle of nothing. So.
Oh, I'm totally with you on that. Yeah. So that was all pre 9/11, and things changed quite a bit. I got off active duty in 97, late 96, 97. I stayed in the reserves. So, I didn't see any action until as a reservist, I got mobilized as lieutenant commander to go to Iraq. And by then I was never going to kick down a door or do anything cool again. I was on staff, but you were still in the thick of it. So talk about that transition. Like, what were you doing on 9/11 and how did that kind of play out for you?
Yeah. I just came back from a deployment. Okay. I went to BUDS as a 3rd phase officer about 5 months before 9/11 happened. Okay. 9/11 happened. And if you know Tom Dietz,
oh yeah,
he was still Team 5 CEO. Yeah. And we had put together a plan. I was going back to be a troop commander for the old boys. So everybody's still banded together. And we kind of put a workout plan together to be the first surge into Afghanistan. And I remember Tom came to me. He's like, "Man, Ed, don't worry about it. It's going to be a marathon, not a sprint." Little did we know it was going to be a goddamn ultra marathon.
Right.
So yeah, I saw, we all at BUDS, Rick Smethers was a commanding officer then, which I think was probably one of the best leaders I've ever worked for. Yeah. Very quiet man. He got us all together. He understood that everybody's chomping at the bit to get down range, right? I mean, if you're not chomping at the bit, then you're in the wrong profession. Right. And he kind of brought us all together and kind of put it in perspective what we're doing and while we're teaching BUD students and all that. And I was lucky enough, Rick thought enough of me. I got the billet to go to SBS, do the British SBS tour.
Oh, cool. Nice.
Yeah. So I just went in as a door kicker. They didn't carry away. So yeah,
did you go to Iraq with the SBS?
Yeah, I went the first time in 04, then I was in there in 05 and then 06. Yeah, so I went with those guys. Unique experience.
What was different about how they operate or their mindset or attitude than the SEALs? Curious.
Well, the first is, which some of the things I liked about the Brits, and I love them if they're listening, I do love you.
By the way, SBS is Special Boat Service.
Special Boat.
It's like the SEAL equivalent to SAS, which is the Special Air Service, which is like their Green Berets, I guess you call it, maybe.
Yeah, it's a Delta versus SEAL team, kind of. SAS, Delta. They are all their training, their selection course. Like BUDS is team oriented, right? For the most part. SBS stuff, the hill climbs and all those in the jungle phase is 100% individual. There's no talking, there's no coaching, there's nothing. So they have a strong sense of individual effort, but the team ability, if you will, was lacking a lot.
Interesting.
So it was very unique. It was just like we had, sometimes some things on target went kind of astray, and it was like 10 heads to the snake at times.
Right.
And it was different. And if you know the Brits, they're not the attention to detail as we are, like in planning. And, everybody in the SEAL teams, when you're planning, everybody's planning, right? There's not like some officer or some sergeant major or some master chief, in our case, handing down a brief and this is what you're going to do. That's how they do it. They basically, as a sergeant major and a first sergeant, whatever, hand down the brief and everybody just sits there and takes the brief. So they don't really involve themselves in it, and they don't, it's more cavalier than we are. But they're tough and they're courageous. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, no doubt. But when you get on target, it's team toughness that really wins the day.
It absolutely is. And everything's going well. Everything's going well. But when it's not going well, you find out where the holes are, right? And where the seams of your plan are. And we found those quite a bit.
I think that's really interesting. So let's like pin this idea of having everyone involved in the planning, because this has, there's a big lesson there for corporate leaders or any organization for that matter. You think about any elite performing team probably has some aspect of this, or even if it's an athletic team, the coach is engaging everyone in the plan, and not just like, it's not hierarchical anymore. It doesn't work in this day and age. Things are too complex, right?
Yep.
Too complex.
And everybody wants ownership, right? That's a common term. People, you got to have ownership. Well, ownership is when you're working on the plan with it. So, now you're part of it. So you do own it. It makes, it makes a big difference in your mind.
Right. Not only that, but it decreases anxiety.
It decreases anxiety because you're taking action. Because
you feel like you're involved, or, that you've got some say in things.
Yep.
Furthermore, having a common, this is kind of my feeling on this thing, having a collective vision is really important. Things go sideways and become a shit show real fast if everyone has a different idea of what the objective is actually supposed to look like when you get toward the meat and potatoes of the mission, right? And so when you plan together, you're engaged in imagery and visualizing and understanding and really like just at a very visceral or embodied level, you've got a sense for what this mission is going to go like if it goes well, and what it looks like when it doesn't go well, and you have those contingencies. But if you're all like a bunch of individuals and you have this plan and you're kind of checked out when you brief the plan, you might have 20 different guys with 20 different visions of what this victory looks like.
Oh yeah, I've seen that part of it. I wasn't fond of it. That part I didn't like very much at all. It was just it's chaotic at times, but yeah, it worked out for us.
Well, what did you learn from the SBS that you wouldn't have learned, or how did you change in a way that you wouldn't have been had you not gone there?
Well, I on a personal level, I mean, obviously it's understanding different cultures, understanding how different countries, because I'm truly live with them. Yeah, we've embedded with other countries and whatnot, but truly lived with them, where I had an ID card. Everything I did, I was British, right?
Interesting.
So we would, wherever we would go, no one in the room knew I was an American because I mostly didn't speak that much. So you'd hear their perspective on the world and how they viewed America. And that was pretty cool, because you can hear, the prejudices, because they viewed us as America with the big golden football, right? We Americans thought we're the best, we're the best country in the world because we have this big football and we have this wealth, we have this big machine, and that's how they saw it.
Right.
And I understand that. I mean, yeah, we do. We have a lot of wealth, and we have a big military and a strong military, and our expeditionary forces, we can mobilize anywhere at any time. Other forces really don't have that.
That's
it. So we were the big brother that they resented a little bit sometimes.
Yeah. So did that bring you some humility?
It did. No, it really did. It changed the way I viewed a lot of things. It made me appreciate America more too. And for what we were good at, and for the SEAL teams and how we function, how our attention to detail, how precise we were, and how dedicated our people were, it really made me appreciate it.
Yeah, that's really cool. So after that, then you went off. Did you become a troop commander? What was next for you?
Yep, troop commander, and then 05 and 06. That's a Ramadi, the Ramadi gig. So that was during a big push. Were
you
always through the spring
with Jocko? Well, Jocko was a team 3.
Yeah, he replaced us. We did about 2-week overlap. So so we set that whole gig up. The last final push down in the Malab district in downtown the stadium, that was happening in January when we were there. But the Marine Corps and the Battle Space Commander, Huck at the time, nobody really wanted it to turn into another Fallujah, right? Because Fallujah was a mess. Everybody just destroyed a lot of things. So he didn't want that. So they kept bumping it. And, so they had that, Jocko and those guys came over for that, and basically 1 month of just, ass kicking in the streets. So yeah, we had kind of carved it out. I think we were pretty much the first force that took on the FID mission with with the intent of the FID mission, because team guys were very reluctant to do that mission first year or so when we started doing it. It's actually embed ourselves with foreigners. And so we took it and kind of ran with it. So I actually went to my boss and was like, hey, I want to take on the whole Iraqi force. We took on 1,500 Iraqis, not just the special forces. We said, yeah, we like those, but we're going to split our SEALs up and be a true force multiplier across the battle phase.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a deep place.
That mission was tricky, right? It worked well if you know, you could trust all the guys, the Iraqis, or, you know, in Afghanistan, I've talked to some team guys who, you know, were turned on by their own forces. We
actually had a couple targets where the Iraqis lost their mind against us, and we were in buildings, bunkered in, like having arguments. Because, you know, one of our guys one time after we blew the door off, stepped on a photograph, and that photograph happened to be a Quran verse. And he was standing on it. And one of the soldiers saw it and lost his fucking mind. I mean, he went crazy. And then we were in a standoff. And then the interpreters had to get out in the middle and kind of figure it out in the compound, like, hey, man. So, wow. And they had ADs, you know, one of the guys were going on target, cracks off around with his AK, blows the guy's foot halfway off.
Oh, shit.
So we had to turn around. So, yeah, all kinds of weird stuff going on.
What was the biggest leadership challenge that you had at that level as a troop commander and in combat?
Well, let's see.
I think dealing with knuckleheads like that.
that was one thing, but the lack, because at the time when I deployed, basically all the SEAL teams sat down. It was kind of a new deployment. We were supposed to go to Afghanistan, but Red Wings happened, you know, the whole, you know, thing. So that switched things up. General Casey sent a message like, we need SEAL team to go to Ramadi. And as we got together for, you know, powwow for a full day with both coasts trying to figure out I left without a mission statement. And it was basically, you go figure out the mission, which we did in about a week's time. We said, okay, this is how we can influence the battle space so much, but it was uncharted ground. And all the naysayers, to be honest with you, inside of our community was probably one of the hardest parts. You know, we would get a lot of like this nasty feedback. What are you doing? You know, there were a couple of times, and I hope they're listening. You know, I had to go to Baghdad, almost got fired because they thought I was taking too much risks and I was doing things that were outside the SEAL, you know, ether, you know, the mission, what do you call it? The 5 principles of a SEAL operator. Mm-hmm. But the battle had changed and the war had changed. So my idea was, well, we change, right? We can want to do all we want to do, but if the battlefield changes, we have to change with it. And then actually some of those naysayers came back a year later and sent me like a formal apology.
Yeah, that's interesting. I have a connection to this story a little bit, if I could share. So I was off active duty at the time, because you're talking about around 2006, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so I was off active duty, but I was still a reserve officer. But I was running, I started the website called NavySEAL.com, and it was you know, kind of like recruiting and helping team guys out or wannabes out.
Sure.
And I was, you know, part of the way I was driving content was kind of like write articles. And I'd hired this where I had this guy who was writing articles, and he said, hey, I want to interview you about, you know, the way spec ops are being deployed in Afghanistan. I was like, okay, you know, so we just called, we had a conversation. And I too shared that belief. I was like, you know, I don't understand really what's going on. I said, you know, granted, I'm not over there, but I don't understand, because, you know, I was always taught that we operate at night, and, you know, if they know we're on target, we fucked up. And and here's SEALs operating in broad daylight, and people are, you know, getting killed. This is after Mark Lee incident, and never in a million years did I think this guy was going to quote me. I thought we were just sharing information. So he quotes me in this article for some other magazine. Oh. And he actually uses my official rank. And the title of the article was Burning Up SEALs. And boy, did I fucking get called in the carpet.
Oh God, I bet.
Holy shit. I was within 24 hours of standing in front of Captain Heinz, just reaming me a new, you know what. And I'm sitting there going, how did I get myself into this? And I was, you know, PNG for a while amongst the, you know, and everywhere I looked, I imagined, you know, darts coming out of the team guys' eyes at me. I'm like, holy shit, how did I fuck up that bad? It taught me a big lesson about dealing with the media and trust, and, you know, being really careful about making sure that, you know who you're talking to and they're going to represent you.
I agree. But that mission was confusing. I didn't do any of the patrol of contact. I didn't do that stuff. But we did do mission VAs at daytime, and we took a lot of Iraqis. The big beef in the community time for me was we were taking Iraqis. That many Iraqis. Like, what are you doing, man? And like, well, that's the mission, dude. That's what we have to do. And then before I left, we'd split just 30 SEALs. We split them off into 3 battalions. So there was an E6 and three dudes running each battalion. We had special forces. We had scout teams. So we had low-level SEALs running hundreds of people on missions. And we were doing at the end, the last few months, we were doing 4 missions a night.
No shit.
I mean, it was just too much. We were handing off missions to people. The SEAL Team 6 would come over. We're like, here, dude, hit all you can hit, because we had built the best. It was kind of ironic, and I don't know if I want to say it, but it's kind of, we built the best source network that you can feasibly build off a person we accidentally shot.
Oh, wow.
And I ended up calling the medevac in for him, saved his life. He became the best source we had. And he recruited so many people until he was caught, tortured, and killed. But
oh, man,
it was, but we created such a network that it just was just flowing. Yep. And we lost no one, and no one got wounded.
Well, that's a huge credit right there.
Yep.
Tell you what, that would be, as a leader, that would be challenging, right? To go into combat and not bring your troops home. And I know everyone who's been to combat, it's a miracle, and it's not your fault if it happens, but man.
Well, that scared, actually scared me more than not getting hurt was, the failure, because, history would judge you very harshly.
That's right.
Right. You look back at Grenada or Panama, and history really hammers those people.
That's right.
And it depends, when you're in the moment, you're in the trees, man, you're not seeing everything. And you have to make those decisions, and people have to trust you, and you have to trust them, and you make the best decision you can make. And there was hard decisions, and I'm thankful we didn't have any casualties. So.
Yeah. Hindsight is 2020, and nobody should be second guessing unless there's outright criminal behavior.
Yeah.
That's like why that whole Eddie Gallagher thing was also very challenging to kind of sift through. You know what I mean? Yep. I don't know what your experience was.
Well,
I don't know him, but I could see both sides of the fence on that one.
Well, I was, when I heard about it, the day I heard about it, I signed up, went to the brig for 9 months. I visited him every weekend in the brig. I raised about $250,000 for him in a week. Yeah. Through one of my networks.
Did you know him beforehand, or was this just
never met him? And Naval Special Warfare, you know who you are. Some people contacted me and said I was been a bad, pillar of the community and a dumbass and all this other stuff. And look, the presumption of innocence, right? To me, that was the most important thing. And they were charging him life without the possibility of parole for allegedly killing a prisoner, and that was his 8th combat deployment. And anybody who's been there and done that understands your state of mind changes quickly, and your state of mind drives you.
That's right.
And not say it's justifiable, but it's definitely not. Even had that been the case, and they said you're guilty of stabbing this prisoner, life without possibility of parole.
That's not good. I agree with
that. I can't. That's not justice.
Right.
So yeah, I supported him pretty heavily, and got to know him in the brig. And only time I missed the brig weekends was when his family came, and I'd just step out and do it because he's a team guy, And to me, that was that fulfillment of being a leader in his community still goes on today.
Right.
So I even went to court. Went to a few of the court things. So
did you? Yeah, we don't have to go down that rabbit hole.
No.
It's too it's too much of a hot potato, and people are acting with complete information. But I did see, it seems like some team guys fell on their sword for him, and it looked like some others actually went out of their way to try to do him harm. So it's just rare that you have that kind of polarization within
it is rare.
The ranks,
Yeah.
So that was kind of interesting. I think that's a unique thing about what's going on today, even in the SEALs and all the military. It's like this, it's kind of reflecting the polarization of what's happened in our society, being led by politics and the media, and so this seems like, to me, like there's this concerted effort to drive wedges between us. And that, the SEALs, who are such a tight group, are not immune to that,
Yeah, and I would say we struggle for our own ethos, right? We struggle to live up to our own ethos. Everyone does. And I think the strain of combat, especially the people that were at the tip of the spear for a very, very long time. We know guys with 15 combat deployments, that's a lot of time. So my question was with the commanders, okay, like, if you're a boxer, if you ever fought, it's important to have a man in your corner, right? Yeah. And not just to give you technique, but to throw that towel in when you're done. Mm-hmm. And there were a lot of guys in the community, in the special forces community, no one ever threw the towel in. They were cooked. They kept going and doing the same, going downrange. And we, as a community special operations command, not just SEALs, but never said no. Every mission came up, hey, Djibouti, boom, yes, we'll do that. We'll do this. We'll go to the Philippines. We were at times when I was a training officer, guys would come back from a 6 or 8 month deployment, take 3 weeks off and go over to, Deb group for a 4-month deployment, come back and start over. Yeah. So it was just a big cycle. Like, when is enough? And we didn't have leadership saying we have to prioritize and actually use our forces effectively, because it's hard to do that, right? It's hard to tell your boss no. Yeah. And I think that's what happened to us in Afghanistan, because I worked with the Afghan commandos. I was embedded with those, and they were the premier force. And I can tell you, every report we sent up said, hey, they're okay, but when we leave, they're done. Yeah. They don't trust their, quote, leadership. They trust Americans, because they see Americans will fight for them and do stuff for them and provide for them and make sure they eat and have a place to sleep. But their own forces wouldn't do that. So that was a big, big lie that went up that chain of command. It's like a turd going up the hill, man. It gets polished. And when it finally gets to the Pentagon, it's beautiful.
That's a beautiful turd.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Yeah, that was predictable. That's fascinating.
Yep. And all of us, matter of fact, I was on a national TV show, and the host asked me, it was like a month or 2 months right before the whole pullout started happening. She goes, what do you think? She asked me, what do you think is going to happen when we start to pull out of Afghanistan? I don't think anything. I know what's going to happen. They're going to collapse around us. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I went back on the show and I was like, I told you so.
Told you so.
I wish I wouldn't have told you so. But
to me, it's such an unfortunate lack of wisdom, right? That's being displayed. Because, I look at that, and if I was, president for a day or a week or a month even, the solution for that was pretty easy. Fucking declare victory by virtue of what we did for the women of Afghanistan.
And the kids. We brought how many hundreds of thousands of people over here?
It's what we did for humankind in Afghanistan.
I agree.
Was a victory. And we're going to leave 3,000 people over there to preserve the rights of the women and children. Yeah. And that would have been an absolute no-brainer. Everyone would have lined up behind it. And they didn't have the wisdom to see through that, to see that solution.
Well, politics confuses people, right? Politics becomes your own, the master in itself.
That's right.
And it's not right and wrong. Yeah. I mean, I tell all the veterans out there, we talked a lot of people are struggling with it. Like, dude, look at the hundreds of thousands of people, these little kids that I've met a few of them that live here that were, immigrants from Afghanistan that we got over here. I mean, they have a wonderful life. They live in America and they have the dreams of kids. Yeah. But that's what we did. We gave more rights to people, the military did, than anyone in my history that I can think of.
Yeah. I have to, my hope is that since there was 20 years of that we influenced that generation enough. Yeah. Both the women and all the kids that, as they evolve and have that memory, that they'll come together and they'll force change on the, whoever ends up running that country, whether it's the Taliban or the Chinese.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. They got a taste of it and they can't untaste that.
That's right. You can't unsee things.
No.
It's like an ayahuasca journey or something. You can't unsee that shit.
Well, no, I don't know anything about that.
No, of course you don't. Awesome. All right. So let's talk about Guts. It's the name of your book, right?
It is. The second one.
The second one. Well, what was your first one?
First, Fast and Fearless, right over there. Well, that way.
Right on. Okay. First.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember that. I think we've been trying to connect for a while, haven't we?
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
So First, Fast and Fearless, was that about your kind of experiences as a team guy and some lessons learned? It's
really mindset. It's about manufacturing motivation, how to deal with fear. And And I was actually going to write I was with the publisher, I was on another path, but I pulled back off that path, and I kind of wanted to write this path. And I'll be, frank up front. 2016, I was having, I'd already retired 4 years earlier, and I thought I was good to go, sort of, but I'd started having some serious issues, personal issues.
Join the club, man. It's not uncommon at all.
Yeah, I mean, I was hearing voices.
All spec ops guys have TBI at some level, and
yeah. Well, I was hearing voices and seeing things at night. So I was like, okay, I was struggling a little bit. So I really just kind of like, hey, I gotta get back to what I did naturally or through most of my life when I was the happiest. Because in the teams, I remember I was a happy guy. Even most people would think, well, that's your job's miserable, but it's miserably good, right? I mean, it's just
you're sharing misery with other guys, and so it's
you see the purpose on what you're doing,
right.
and so that it kind of started with that. I was like, okay, breaking apart the things I did, because before I left, I was a training officer at the center, and I'd been a group training officer. So basically, things I did were tactical stuff with 9 troops, and then 9 deployments, and then two times as a training officer.
Right.
So we had a training meeting when I was there, and it was in 2010. It's on the San Clemente Island, right? Mm-hmm. And we were trying to break down buds, for instance, and had like 50 or 60 people from the community, even some, I'll think of it in a second, Master Chief, famous from back in the Vietnam. Oh,
yeah.
We tried to figure out every evolution that we did and why we did it. Mm-hmm. And no one could agree. We had no idea. It's scary. People might think this is scary, but we didn't have a collective clue. We knew how to make the soup, but we didn't know how to make it. So to me, I kind of extracted a lot of things from that, and why we do what we do. And most SEALs can't tell you that. They just say, well, that's what we do. We've been doing it for this many years. Like, okay,
we know that it works.
We know that it works. That's right. But if we got to pull some strings, then what does it affect? And that was what I was trying to figure out. So a lot of the things I brought forth in this was that those type of ideas and concepts that we were built into the program that most SEALs didn't even know.
That's fascinating. So let's double click on fear. Like, what is it about fear that is both positive, that can be a motivator, and how do we eradicate, the debilitating effects of fear from your perspective?
Well, the awfulizing, right? I call it the ruminating, right? Because fear tells you the event's not happening, right? If you fear a lion eating you, well, usually you're not in the fear for a moment. So we attend to the human mind goes right to fearful stuff, right? We watch the news. Everything is about fear, negative based. It's just a natural default. Right. So, and we start to ruminate, and if you can't control your focus, right? And I know you guys meditate a lot, and so do I, is if you can't control that focus, you can't be in a stressful combat zone. You'll fall apart. And I've seen guys, I had a guy from my troop, not a SEAL, just mentally collapsed. He never left the wire. He never went outside the compound because he was ruminating the whole time. And, for that, you mentioned earlier, is take action, right? So we are always in combat or in a stressful situation. You're always taking action. You're not setting back on the defense. You're always on the offense. That's right. The cause of the effect, not the effect that was caused. Mm-hmm. And that's a very important thing, is learn to focus on what you're doing at the moment and always take action. Because in your mind, some of that ruminating becomes reality, right? Because your mind sometimes doesn't know the difference between a mental rehearsal, like if you're shadow boxing,
it doesn't know the difference at all.
Right. So you build the neural pathways the same way. Negativity does the same thing. You can have the same practice in your mind, good or bad. And, that's, I think for fear though, we have that tendency to ruminate and allow our mind just to go into that mode. And
I love this, tying that to kind of offense versus defense. If you're ruminating, it means you're sitting back and you're in defense, you're waiting to be acted upon, like you said.
Yep.
But when you have that offensive mindset, you're the cause of the effect, and you have that bias toward action, then you're creating the conditions to learn more, to move toward, the enemy, to move toward the threat.
Yep.
And now that the universe is reacting to you, the enemy's reacting to you.
Yeah.
And you can always maintain the momentum in that regard. The more momentum you have, the less fear.
A lot easier to fight on your toes than your heels, I think.
I love it. Awesome. So how did you get through this potential life altering breakdown. And we've had a couple teammates commit suicide, and it's a debilitating issue,
Yeah. Well, I've had two in one platoon do it.
No shit.
Yeah. And 6 months apart. Well, I mean, to me, just going back doing those things, the basic things. Yeah. I mean, it sounds silly, but taking care of physicality, right? Getting physical, getting outdoors to the physical world, eating well and sleeping, the chassis,
a big one,
and controlling your mind. And I mean, controlling it like meditation. I love the fact that you guys, you really push into meditation, because controlling the mind is very important, I think, and to be a great operator, to be a person that lives their life in the moment. But I just went back to those things. I got outside, I got nutrition, I ran, I was running, because running is my thing. Even though I'm a big guy, I was running about 150, 200 miles a month.
Holy shit.
And I was shaking. I figured if I'm going to have bad feelings and all these weird things going on in my brain, that if it's going to follow me, it's going to exhaust it when it gets there. Right. And I just used it because, when you're exhausted, it's hard to be, in this fight or flight mode.
Yeah. Running is awesome.
I really got to control my diet and my sleep. I went very offensive with the sleep. So I just went back to what I did before. You got to get the group dynamics. You got to be around people. You have to have purpose. Because when I did this, I stopped. I used to do a lot of business consulting, and I was doing a lot of that. And I actually completely switched. I mean, I still do speaking gigs and stuff like that, but I switched, and now I work with foster, juvenile, and kids, homeless, and kids of color.
Nice.
And I'm approved credit for the San Diego County Office of Education in the juvenile court system, which is hard to do. But yeah, so I teach mental toughness. I'm working a program, me and my partner, working a program with Lennar Construction and Homemade, which is a national organization. We're going to have a pilot course in January, 6-week course or 4-week course. They're still figuring it out. They're going to get people off the street, train them in construction, give them trades, and get them employed. I have the first 2 out of 4 or 6 weeks. Mental toughness, because they saw the value, and you can have skills, but you got to control the mind.
I love that.
Yeah, we call it in my website. It's called myphd.me, which is it's just getting cranked up right now. But it's to get a PhD in themselves is probably the most important thing, to be able to understand themselves and then understand the world.
Hearing stories like this is what gives me hope, and really believes in an optimistic future in spite of all the bullshit and negativity.
Yeah, because
it's people, we're starting to take action because we realize the government has failed. You know what I mean? How much money has gone into trying to solve this issue, and which has done nothing? Homelessness and juvenile delinquency, or not delinquency, but whatever. Yeah, everything that goes into that. So the more money the government throws at it, the worse it seems to get. That's right. So now we've got a couple private corporations and an individual like you. This is happening all over the place. Yep. Where individuals and nonprofits are saying, okay, screw it. We can't wait any longer. Right. We're going to solve global warming. We're going to solve, homelessness. Social entrepreneurship. I think that's the way ahead. They're going to solve problems, and the government bureaucracy just can't and won't do it. And we can't outsource it to government. Government's got no heart, no soul. No, but they keep wanting to take more and more of our money. So they keep wanting to do that, and people allow them. You can't undo that. It's like that ratchet, man. Once you tighten it down, it stays tight. You don't undo government programs. It's hard. No, it's really hard. That's fascinating. All right, so shift fire, and we got to kind of wrap up pretty soon. So I promised you 45 minutes. So your new book, Guts, talk about that a bit, and what are the major insights that you're going to teach people in that? Well, a lot of the stuff, it'll be just about learning that PhD in me, about yourself, about understanding how to control your focus, there's a lot of how-to books out there, but not a lot of people talk, okay, everybody's like, well, discipline's a very important thing. Okay, but if I can't get my ass off the couch, how do I get some of that discipline, right? This is I call it the blue-collar scholar approach, and I approach everything in this manner with some science, but with how do you turn the damn wrench, right? If I want to teach people accountability, right? And BUD instructors never really even figured this out. And I was like, how do we teach accountability to BUD students? It's a simple control of language, right? Mm-hmm. How you give them two answers to respond to. If you ask them a question, they get 2 answers and 1 excuse. The answers are, did you get something done? Yes, no. And then the excuse is, I fucked up. So, and that excuse, and it's a joke of an excuse, but it starts to break that belief. It starts to separate that belief and that with failure.
right? So you create a distance between them, and then you'll see the students around Hell Week time or after Hell Week get really innovative. They don't go to an excuse automatically, and it's just by language. They go right to solving the problem because they realize we don't care about your excuses, right? Nobody, the mission doesn't care, the nation doesn't care, history doesn't care. So you have to break your relationship with those damn excuses. So that's how we create that accountability discipline. And just through language, right? Your language, how to use certain words. There's taboo words out there that trigger emotional response. You remember Chief Jaco?
Oh yeah.
He's probably listening. I wrote about him in the first book, and I love because I didn't think he did anything but curse. But I will never forget the stuff he would. I remember that one time that he's like, and I'm jackhammering on the berm. It's Hell Week, and I'm just wet, and it's like 40 degrees outside. The wind's blowing, and he's like, "Man, you are one hard motherfucker." And that was like, boom, cold chills. I still get cold chills. And he's like, hit the fucking surf. And I was like, boom. But he anchored that belief into me that even now, if I say, who y'all motherfucker, I'll still get cold chills.
Jaco comes up. Yeah.
Yeah. So I try to go about it or do go about it in those ways of trying to actually turn the screws. How do you turn the screws when you can't get off the couch?
Yeah.
The how-tos.
That's pretty cool. Jaco, I did a 30-day SCAR. You remember SCARs?
I was the 30-day instructor myself.
Were you? No shit.
I did it. It was combatives at the time. I did it when it was combatives, so it was 95. So it
already shifted from SCARs. Yeah.
30. I told people that's the hardest course I've ever done. A 300-hour.
Me too. I lost like 20 pounds.
Dude,
we fought 10 hours a day for 30 days.
30 days straight. Your knuckles are swollen up. Your ribs are busted.
Did you do the berm drills where you just go up and down the berm, just beating the shit out of each other one after another?
I did mine on the East Coast because we had that big, huge mount silly thing. It was
that's right.
Awful. It was brutal, man. It was brutal.
Awesome. Well, man, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate you and the work you're doing and your time today. Where can people find out more about you, your books, your work?
Yeah, just go on edhiner.com or myphd.me is going to be our educational website. It's up right now, but we're working on the process of it. But yeah, please go on edhiner.com or anywhere you can find books, you can find mine. And hopefully I got a gig going. Hopefully I'll be doing a gig with Tony Robbins in February.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, he endorsed me, and he's gonna. I think next week or the following week his media team's gonna spit out some stuff about us. Yeah. So
awesome.
I might be on one of his UPW or whatever programs.
Good for you. Yeah, I did wealth mastery for him, standing in front of 4,000 people. It's not like 100,000, but it was pretty cool,
dude.
And 20-minute presentation. They said it was the best they'd ever had, and it's just sweet, great stuff. Tony's he's doing good work. He's got incredible leverage. So good luck with that. That's awesome.
Yeah, cool. I appreciate that, man. Yeah, I went to his UPW one, and I was a VIP up there. And it was like, wow, that guy's got something going.
I don't know how he does it. He's on stage for like 13 hours straight.
Yeah, it's crazy. Anybody that hasn't been, man, it's a unique experience in my opinion. That's crazy.
Yeah, I was invited. This guy named Bill O'Keefe is his fire master, and he was really into SEAL Fit. He tried Kokoro 3 times. He's never made it through, but he still loves SEAL Fit, and so he gave me tickets to go to Date with Destiny.
Yeah. All right.
Which is their 6-day thing. So I didn't pay. I don't think I would have paid for it, but I'm really glad I got to go. It was really fascinating.
Dude, that's cool.
Yeah, it was cool. Oh, by the way, when one side of me was Gavin Newsom and the other side of me was Maria Schreiber.
Nice.
I was up in that, the VIP section, and Gavin Newsom didn't give me the time of day.
Go figure.
I know, right? Oh man. All right, buddy. Super good to meet you. And
cool, you too, man.
Yeah, we'll so go check out Ed at Ed Hiner, HINER.com, and myphd.me. That's awesome, by the way.
Yeah.
Great URL. And check out his book, Guts. And your first one name was?
First, Fast, Fearless.
First, Fast, Fearless. Great title.
Yeah.
All right, buddy.
Cool.
Keep rocking.
Yeah, you too, brother. Thanks, man.
Thank you very much. Nice to meet you. All right. Take care.
Cool.
Hope you enjoyed the show, folks. Come on back next time if you like this content, you like the type of people we talk to. And as I mentioned earlier, we will be changing up the format of the show. So look forward to some changes and some more and more incredible people like Ed to have conversations about things that are important to all of us. So thanks again for your support, and we'll see you next time. Divine out. Hoo-yah.